The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Hello everyone, welcome into Students of the Game. My name is Alex Baumann, and I'm joined by my co-host today, Gray Oldenburg and Nathan Glidewell. Week 9 of the college football season has come and gone, guys. It's the first time since September 14th that Alabama and Auburn have won on the same weekend. Granted, the majority of that's fault is laid on Auburn because they have only had 3 wins. But they have 3 wins nonetheless. Gray, what happened this weekend, so we'll get into that. But Nathan, Alabama loses to Tennessee last week. Coming this week, a lot of eyes on this game, must win. Every game the rest of the season is a must win. But they come out and give a big answer to that Tennessee loss and beat Missouri 34-0. First shutout since 2020. And that was a 41-0 win over Mississippi State. So Nathan, we've harped on the demeanor on the sideline, how that's been an issue, the culture, the coaching decisions, not running the football, the defense, some struggles there. But the win here, 34-0, what did you see from this Alabama team that shows you they've improved just in one short week?
Well, first off, I want to address that this team is very injured, especially on the defensive end. Talk about the secondary. Missing Keon Sabb is huge, but Brady Hubbard stepping in, he had his first start, and he made a play. He had an interception, so instantly making an impact, things like that. But it seemed from the jump that everyone on the team was locked in, and they had one common goal of winning. And I will say this, I was super impressed with the defense and the tenacity they played with, just not allowing Missouri to do much of anything anywhere. And especially going into the late stretch of the game when Missouri got down to the 1 yard line, having the ability to stop them and get off the field, and secure the shutout, I think was a big confidence booster for a lot of those guys who have put in a lot of work the past few weeks, especially going back to Tennessee, to really improve. So it's a big confidence booster going into the bye week, and then of course you'll have LSU following that. That's going to be, a very, very big game. But I think things improved on the offensive end. It didn't look very good in the first half. The first few drives were not very good. Just some of the more common mistakes were made that we seen back to the Tennessee week, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. But then Nick Sheridan started to run the ball a lot, and Alabama, I hadn't seen him run the ball this well since we played Western Kentucky first week of the season. A lot of credit to guys like Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, who ran the ball very, very angrily, would be the way to describe it. Justice Haynes had a huge lick on one of the Missouri defensive backs and took it for a touchdown. So when you have plays like that show that you're a more balanced offense, you can't just do one thing. You're not a one trick pony, and you're able to be physical with teams. That's huge for playing the SEC. This is this one that should have started going back to Georgia and then continued beyond. But we've had slip ups, we've had teams out physical us, and I think that's a big thing. If you want to continue, if you want to win out, you're going to have to out physical teams. You'll have a big task ahead of you because LSU is very physical. I think Milroe hasn't looked comfortable the past few weeks. He didn't look all that comfortable on Saturday. Still miss a lot of throws that normally he would make, and then whenever he would take off and run out of the pocket, which I did like to see. I did like to see that come back. He looked a little hobbled. I don't know if something's happened. They've reported that he's not been injured, but from what I've seen on the field, it looks like he's dealing with something but might be minor that he can play through. But obviously it's not been reported. But all around, a great team win. Missouri was struggling with injuries of their own. Brady Cook played the first few series, but then decided to come out the rest of the game hurting his hand. So he might as well go ahead and go not play the rest of the season because he might not be able to do anything else ever again, given the fact that Auburn last week, he almost broke his ankle. And Luther Burden wasn't able to do anything. missing Nate Noel for them was a huge miss. They weren't able to really establish the running game. They were able to get it going later in the game against some of the second and third stringers from that Bama defense, but for the most part, Missouri wasn't able to move the ball effectively. Um, and I want to talk about one thing. Eli Drinkwitz, one of the
Oh,
most it's so stupid when people go and talk to student athletes from positions of coaching, especially when you're the head coach of a team and you want to trash talk them. Um, if I had my starting quarterback, God be in for it. That is so stupid. What a clown. And then we'll talk about SEC officiating once again
I
because
was going to bring it up.
it's like every single week we can't figure it out. We still can't figure it out. So people don't know how to blow whistles. Brady Cook gets absolutely demolished by LT Overton. Penalty on that for a late hit, even though there's no whistle. Idiots. But Eli,
It was minor. It was minor. You could hear it, but on the field in that environment, it's very hard to hear
wow.
that.
Well, I couldn't hear it. And if I can't hear it when they amplify sound on the TV, then I don't understand how you're expected to hear it in front of 100,000 fans. So that's on the officials. But Eli having stuff to say after that really shows how much character he has as a coach. Very little respect for him. And the fact that his team got blown out 34-0 makes it even sweeter to me that he got what he deserved. Look, Missouri is not a terrible team, but they are showing injured. If they had all their pieces back, I think that we'd be talking about a better off Missouri team. But I would still say that's a great, solid win. It's much needed, especially after the past 3 weeks of play, which have been very poor. But it's very obvious that there's a goal in front of you. If you want to reach it, you're going to have to do this and this to get there. And in order for that to happen, the team has to play as one. And for the most part, they did that Saturday. Just got to continue it every single week.
I think one thing that really was highlighted in this game is the need for your team to have a backup quarterback that's at least semi-competent.
Mhm.
Auburn doesn't even have a competent starting quarterback, but you saw it with Missouri. Brady Cook went out of the game. Drew Pine came in, a fifth-year senior. So you're like, okay, Drew Pine, he's going to be a reliable backup. Not even close. I'm pretty sure a true freshman on Alabama would have made better decisions than what Drew Pine was making. He is undersized. They list him at 6 foot on ESPN, but they're talking about in the broadcast, he's maybe lucky to be 5'9", 5'10". He's like Bryce Young height. And he did not look good at all. If Brady Cook can't go the rest of the season, Missouri is in for a world of hurt because Drew Pine's not the answer. They got J.R. Blood from Southern. He looked okay, but that's not really the offense that Drinkwitz really wants to run with that type of quarterback. So Missouri, your season to make the college football playoff is basically over. You lose your two ranked games by a combined score against SEC opponents of a combined score of 75-10. No, there's no way a committee's going to look at you with two losses, with those being your two losses, and go, yeah, we're going to put you in over a two-loss, even a Big 12 team. I mean, we'd have Colorado over Missouri right now if we're looking at this on the grand scale. But Missouri's in for a big issue if Brady Cook can't go the rest of the season. I mean, it's rough for them with Drew Pine at quarterback. Gray, let's flip over to Auburn here. We talked about it when we started the show. First win since September 14th, 24-10 over Kentucky. But the start of that game was very, very rough for Auburn. Started out down 10-0, but they came back and answered. Jarquez Hunter had his career game, over 200 rushing yards. Great performance from him. What happened in this game that Auburn was able to not crumble under their own weight after going down 10-0?
Yeah, there's obviously a flip of the switch of, oh my gosh, we have the best running back in the SEC, one of the best running backs in the country. Let's give him the ball. And not only does that, he's going to be able to destroy a team like Kentucky because he's the best running back, but that opens things up for the other running backs. That opens things up in the play action pass game. We saw it. The start of this game, the first quarter of this game was the same old crap. Auburn opened up their opening drive, got a penalty on the return, and then 3 straight pass plays to go 3 and out. And then on the second drive, Peyton Thorne throws it right to a defender, throwing it late to an open Keandre Lambert-Smith. It was the same old crap, but something happened at the end of the first quarter where Auburn flipped a switch. of, oh my goodness, Jarquez Hunter, number 27 back here, is the best player on the field. And to be honest, he's been the best player on the field in a lot of games that Auburn has played this season. And yet here we are just now getting over this hump. Obviously, a career day for Jarquez Hunter. I think that this type of game right there establishes him as a top 10 running back in college football and the best back in the SEC. No, not a back in the SEC that could do what Jarquez Hunter did for this Auburn team on Saturday. He was just, every time he touched the ball, it's like, oh my gosh, he's going for 40. Oh my gosh, he's going for 15. And he's not getting hit. Jarquez Hunter had over 150 yards after contact against Kentucky. He was getting hit, but he was dragging these players with him. And Kentucky's not a great run defense, but I mean, when they played Georgia, they held them to just over 100 yards. Then they played Ole Miss. When they went to Ole Miss and beat them, they held them to just under 100 yards rushing. So it's not like this Kentucky team is they're not good, but they're not, an Alabama A&M or New Mexico. Like, it's just like, they're not the same athletes. No, this Kentucky defense is pretty good and has some pretty good athletes. And Jarquez Hunter was just able to run all over. And you give credit to the offensive line as well. They played by far their best game of the season in this one. And then it opened things up for the rest of the offense. Let me tell you something. The first quarter, Peyton Thorne's numbers were 5 of 10 for 41 yards and an interception. The remaining 3 quarters after that, he was 15 of 16 for 131 yards and a touchdown. Because that's exactly what the offense was like when he was at Michigan State and they had Kenneth Walker III. That's exactly what made him so good. He's got an unbelievable tailback behind him. Let him establish the offense and open things up. And that's exactly what it did. It opened up the short little hitch routes to Cam Coleman and Keandre Lambert-Smith. Both of those 2 guys made plays off of that. It opened up the little swing passes to Jarquez Hunter and Malcolm Simmons. It opened up everything. And Auburn could then run their offense through Jarquez Hunter. And it's not that Auburn went to Lexington and beat Kentucky and came back from town 10-0, put up 24 unanswered points, could have been more. It's how they did it that makes you think, the rest of the season, I'm not saying you can get 3 wins out of the last 4 games because you got some really tough opponents towards the end of that schedule, but it really shows we've got the talent to do it, and you show them you can do it. So now it's just about continuing that, executing it, running the offense through Jarquez Hunter. I do want to mention, before we move on, how incredible Auburn's defense was second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter of this game. They were flat out incredible. It was DJ Durkin's by far his best performance. Dorian Mausi, the Duke transfer middle linebacker, was great. Eugene Asante was great. Keldrick Falk, I've never seen a sophomore be so NFL ready than Keldrick Falk. It's like there's 4 guys trying to block him. It's opening things up for guys like Asante and Mausi and Jalen McLeod and guys like that. It's impressive. And other teams are starting to recognize that and go, holy crap, we're going to have to block that 19-year-old kid because otherwise he's going to kill Brock Vandegrift. And then talking about the freshmen, we've been talking about it every single podcast that we've been on here, talking about the freshmen on defense, Jay Crawford, Kinsley Faustin, Caleb Harris, Malik Blockton, just unbelievable performances. Kayan Lee played another outstanding game. I know he's not a freshman, but I did want to mention his name, played great. The 4th down stop at the first and goal at the 2, Kentucky had it to cut it to a 1-score game. Stop at the goal line, stop at the goal line, stop at the goal line, and then an interception by Kayan Lee. That was tremendous. That was the DJ Durkin defense with this type of talent that we've been waiting to see all year. And now we finally got it. Now it's about moving forward, what you're going to do, because you got some tough games coming up. Obviously, you did beat Vandy last year up in Nashville, but they got a new quarterback by the name of Diego Pavia. I know y'all 2 know all about him, just like myself.
Do we have to talk about him? Is that like a must
That's
talk?
that is a big it's a must win for Auburn, in my opinion. Obviously, you're not trying to make a bowl. You're not trying to get, of course, you're not trying to get to a playoff or anything like that. It's not for implications. It's for moving forward. It's for leaving we can't close out games behind you. It's close out this one. Then go into a bye week, get a ULM game, run Jarquez Hunter. Holy crap, they're not going to be able to stop him that game. And then you host a probably top 6 or 7 Texas A&M team in Jordan-Hare in the back of November. Who knows? You're talented enough to beat a Texas A&M team, but can you do it? And then you go to Tuscaloosa. So it's a very tough end of that schedule. But moving forward, I think Auburn has found their niche. Give it to 27 and let things open up for the offense. That dude his stock is rising for the NFL draft. Super, super proud of him. He's a guy that easily, when Tank Bigsby decided to come back for his junior year, when he was a sophomore, could have left and gone and been a stud somewhere else. But he's the one that sticked it out and stayed, got his chance his junior year. There was a whole scandal against him in the beginning of his junior year. He had to sit out the first 2 games last year, which cost him to be a 1,000-yard rusher last year. And this year, he's the SEC leading rusher now. I know a lot of that is against Kentucky, but you can't discount that kid. That absolute beast. Hand him the damn ball.
Just like Auburn teams have passed.
I will say, I think the answer was pretty obvious to us when we saw what kind of roster Auburn had, and then not to mention the amount of issues Auburn has had throwing the ball earlier on in the season. But you finally come out and establish the run game, and you not only do that, but decide to give Jarquez a much more larger amount of carries in the 10 or less he usually gets a game for some reason. I know that Hugh Freeze probably doesn't run that offense a lot. But you look at the upcoming schedule, you look at these teams, Vanderbilt is very, very good. I think they are, as far as teams in the SEC, you can say middle of the pack now. Yeah. I think they've officially removed themselves from the bottom of the SEC tier. And they're a scary team. I mean, I know about that. Texas fans know about that. They've looked good all season. So in order to beat a team like Vanderbilt at home, what needs to happen for Auburn? Is it a more similar game plan, which we saw in the Kentucky game, or do you really go out of your way to make sure you have success through the air against that Vanderbilt team, so you have a more balanced offense? And then, of course, on the defensive end, how are you going to stop Diego Pavia and the absolute trickery that they run on the offensive end?
For sure. Talk about offense. What should be Auburn's offensive game plan? Yes, of course, establish the run game, give it to Quez early, and let things open up. Of course, it worked against Kentucky. It's going to work against a team like Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt defensively is not talented enough to keep up with Auburn's talent on offense. And I'm talking Auburn's entire running back room and entire receiving room. And if Auburn establishes the line of scrimmage, especially early in that game in Jordan-Hare, that's going to be a fantastic sign. You want to get Diego Pavia playing from behind in this game. You want to get up 14-0, 17-0, 21-0 in this game. And you could easily do that by establishing the run game with Jarquez Hunter early. But you've got to be able to get Pavia playing from behind and get him in throwing deep, over the middle situations. I think Auburn's defensive backfield has gotten a lot better over the course of the season. Obviously, the injury to Champ Anthony earlier in the year, I was like, oh gosh, we need somebody to step up. And that's exactly what freshman Jay Crawford has done opposite Kayan Lee. I think it's going to be giving him different looks per play. This is an experienced guy. It's somebody that has seen Hugh Freeze multiple times, not just at Auburn and New Mexico State last year. He saw him when Hugh Freeze was at Liberty. So this is a guy that Hugh Freeze and Diego Pavia, they're familiar with each other. They know how to play against each other. I think it's going to be. I think DJ Durkin's game plan is going to win or lose this game for Auburn. We can talk about giving the ball to Jarquez. We can talk about if Peyton Thorne's going to be efficient or not, especially on third down, which he was against Kentucky, his most efficient game on third down. but DJ Durkin's defensive game plan to give Diego Pavia multiple looks, per drive against this Vanderbilt offense is going to be huge. I think a huge home field advantage needs to be there as well. Vandy has not been a team that has been very good outside of Nashville this year. They have not been very good on the road. You need to take advantage of that and take advantage of it early. Get them playing from behind.
All right, since we're done with talking about Auburn here, let's move on to another game that happened in the SEC this past weekend, that being Texas A&M versus LSU. That was the big marquee matchup of the weekend. Texas A&M ends up beating LSU 38-23, even though LSU went at a halftime with a 17-7 lead. Garrett Nussmeier in the first half looked like the best quarterback in the country. He was playing really well, slinging the football. His footwork looked great, making great decisions. Then he comes out in the second half, and he looks like crap. Throws 3 second half interceptions. One really cost him the game. He threw it right to the linebacker. I don't know what he was looking at, if he just tried to get rid of it to the running back out of the backfield or what, but it was directly to the linebacker. He was running for his life. He didn't look comfortable at all. And while it falls on Garrett Nussmeier a little bit, Mike Elko's second half adjustments were insanely good. Not only taking out Connor Weigman, who struggled in the first half, and putting in Marcel Reed, who played an exquisite second half of football, had LSU's defense reeling. But the defensive adjustments Mike Elko made really changed this game. I mean, they had pressure after pressure. A&M's 2 defensive lines, their units that they swap out, are probably the best 2 units in the country if you put them against Alabama or Ohio State, whoever you want to say has a good defensive line. Michigan has a really good one too. But there are 2 groups they have are really good. And they, I think, changed the outcome of this game much more than Marcel Reed did. And I know everybody's giving him a lot of credit, but the defense changed this game, had the LSU offense reeling, and Marcel Reed took advantage of it, took advantage of LSU's defense not understanding how to run a zone scheme, try to defend against QB run, which might be an issue for them going to play in Alabama next week with running quarterback. But what helped A&M win this game against LSU after starting down so much in that first half?
You just said it. That defensive front is just nasty. I know Walter Nolan went to Ole Miss and LT Overton went to Alabama, but those studs from that Jimbo Fisher recruiting class on that defensive front are still there, and they're fantastic. And they have gotten to the point where I think they have more of an effect on Grant Nussmeier's second half performance than anything. I think the adjustments were really good. I think A&M played a lot better in the second half offensively, obviously, but that defensive front is one of, if not the best in the country. And they deserve every bit of credit for this game. Just like you said, Alex, a lot of people are giving Marcel Reed credit, and he played incredible down the stretch, but especially as a true freshman, so you do give him credit. But that defensive front, without that defensive front's performance, especially in the second half, this is a different ball game, because Grant Nussmeier comes out looking the same as he does in the first half. I think LSU walks away with a win. But now you're talking about that LSU Alabama game in 2 weeks, both teams coming off a bye, is a playoff elimination game. And that is going to be freaking awesome. But how is LSU going to respond to that? And then talking about Texas A&M, how is Texas A&M going to do with the rest of their schedule? Hey, talking about they got Texas at the end of the year. They still got to go to Auburn. They are in the driver's seat to walk into Atlanta pretty easily. And how did they respond with such a big win after last Saturday?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, I looked at the final possessions of the first half, and Texas A&M giving LSU the ball and giving them more opportunities to increase their lead, and really just go into halftime with all the momentum. Well, LSU failed on several of those possessions. A&M finished, boy, they need the half out, and then being able to open up that second half and really just punch LSU in the mouth. And let's be honest, that Brian Kelly-led team did not know how to respond. And it was a situation where I watched Garrett Nussmeier get rattled constantly. Talk about the amount of pass rush that Texas A&M incorporated into their defensive scheme in the second half. Really just overpowering that LSU offensive line. They really just out physicaled them. And I think that was the biggest thing for Texas A&M going forward, and then making the change at QB and being able to finally move the ball effectively. I think that was the biggest thing. But I will say the environment that Texas A&M had Saturday night was nothing short of incredible, and it definitely played a huge part in the way LSU played in the second half. Because once you lost your momentum, there was no way you're going to get it back. You just constantly got buried and buried and buried. The fans got more into it. Texas A&M, while they have a very weird and cultish fan base, they are extremely passionate about their football team, and they really showed it Saturday night. But going forward, like you said, Gray, they have a very intense schedule. I'm going to be excited to see what they're able to do against Texas. Texas hasn't looked great the past 2 weeks, but we all know what they're capable of talent-wise. And then, of course, the matchup in Baton Rouge in 2 weeks. I think everyone's pointing to that and being like, wow, we're tuned in. This is really going to change how the playoff looks.
For sure, for sure. I do want to make one more note about Texas A&M because I'm going to have to say this, Joe, because in a few weeks it might not just completely invalid. But just Texas A&M fans, y'all know where Atlanta is? Y'all are aware where Atlanta is? It's in Georgia. It's like middle Georgia. You just go right across the interstate. You can go right through Alabama. You can get there.
Yeah, before anybody comes after me for saying this, Texas A&M has the best running back duo in the country. Hands down. Ohio State's Quinshon Judkins, Trayvon Henderson,
for sure.
underwhelming. Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen at Penn State have not looked good the past few weeks. Alabama, Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, very talented, but we don't run the football. So it's hard to say that it's the best running back duo in the country. But you look at A&M, their running backs have won them a lot of football games because their quarterback play has been very subpar. So I think that is the best running back duo in the country. And if this offense is able to continue to do this and beat a Texas team, that's what we'll look at offensively. It's not going to be Marcel Reed or Connor Wiegman being the cornerstones of this team. It's going to be Ken Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss will this offense to victory. And they have done that this season. And one thing for LSU, this is a one-dimensional team. Their running game is nowhere. It's like the total opposite of A&M. LSU's running game is non-existent. And when you play a team like A&M and you're not able to run the football, those pass rushers are just going to pin their ears back and come after the quarterback. Yep. That's exactly what happened in that second half. Emory Jones looked atrocious. I mean, he was getting worked off the ball constantly. One of his worst games ever. So it's like a tale of two teams. A&M loves to run the football, and they did it really good. LSU didn't, and they paid for it. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening and watching, students of the game.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.